So my name's Ray Poynter, and I'm going to be talking to you about the different sorts of ways that people are using altered realities in market research, why they're using them, and what those core techniques are. So why are people using these altered realities? Well, there are really two reasons for two types of altered realities. The first is to improve the focus, to improve the amount of information that is available. So virtual reality and augmented reality, which we're going to look at in a moment, are all about giving extra information to the participant, making things more real, making them able to look at more aspects of whatever it is that we're looking at. So if it's a shop fitting, they can see more of the shop. If it's a new product, they can turn the product around and they can examine it. So it's providing more information. The alternative is, the altered reality is to change the focus of the participant, to be able to dig below the conscious level, to distract them, to be less system two. Because a market research situation is over-rationalized. And one of the big changes that's really happened in our industry over the last 10 to 15 years in particular is that we've realized that many traditional questions do not actually work very well because we're not aware of our own motivations. We're poor witnesses to why we do things and what we're going to do next. And so we need to look at different ways of glancing behind the curtain to be able to find what's going on. I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction to those, and then you're going to get quite a lot more about games and gamification from Betty Adamu in one of the follow-up presentations shortly. So, first of all, virtual reality. Why do we use it? Well, we tend to use it when words or pictures, JPEGs, PNGs, GIFs, or videos are not good enough. So there are essentially two types of virtual reality. The first works on a computer screen. So it can be on a smartphone, it can be on a tablet, it can be on the PC screen. It's flat when you look at it, but you can take products and turn them around. You can walk through stores. Anybody who plays a variety of computer games will be aware of how you can create a 3D world on all of these flat screen devices. And so what goes on there is we may have a store fixture. You can go up to the fixture, you can pick something, you can take it off the shelf, you can have a look at it. The second, and probably it's fair to say the most exciting forms of virtual reality around are the immersive ones, where you'll put on something like the Oculus Rift headset, although increasingly, of course, there are these cardboard devices which enable people to turn a smartphone into a 3D device. There's going to be a stack more 3D devices, immersive tools coming available shortly. And in this, you can turn your head round. You are much more in that situation. So it's more engaging. Now, there's clearly a big difference between the two in what is required to set it up. On the left, you only need access to a screen. You can do it with some of the systems online or via mobile research. If we're talking about the immersive setup at the moment, it pretty much means that people have to go to a central location. That is where the headsets are set up. Obviously, as more and more people start buying virtual reality headsets, it starts to raise the possibility that people could take part in immersive market research using virtual reality from home or whatever. We still have the slightly odd situation. You're not going to do it on the train. You're not going to do it on the bus. You're not going to do it in the office with a headset on and ignoring everybody else around you. So there are going to be some interesting challenges and learning processes as we go through all of that. Some considerations when people use virtual reality. And it's probably just worth saying that virtual reality has been around a long time, and it's been around a long time in market research. This afternoon in the UK, or in the morning as it will be in the United States, Steve Nadell is going to be looking back over the 23 years he's been using virtual reality. So it's been around for a long time, and it's been tackling certain specific niches and requirements. And we're going to look at why it tackles niches rather than tackling everything as part of this as well. So one of the first considerations that you have to take into account is how real are you going to make the virtual reality experience? So the flat screens are less real than the immersives, but even if you're in the immersive, you're normally talking about relatively angular fixtures and features, because the more and more real you make it, the more time and money it requires to make it more real, and the additional insight is really marginal. So as soon as you move into VR, you get a jump in insight from just using flat pictures. And then as you improve that virtual reality experience, you will get gains, but they tend to be marginal. Where they're not marginal, so some of the work that is done in prototypes of new cars, where the amount of money that you can save by getting it right is enormous, then people will often do a much more immersive and much more realistic version of virtual reality. One of the interesting things is that when you see a demonstration about virtual reality, you will often see it shown as a walkthrough. So you go into a retail outlet, you walk through the door, you go down the aisles, you find the shelf that you're interested in. The majority of research that's actually done does not take the walkthrough because it normally adds very little to the insight, but it adds time, it adds cost, it's an extra set of things that have to be organized. So if you want to know how the shelf layout works and how the end of the shelf or the gondola or the baskets at the end are functioning, then a walkthrough might be relevant. But you're not normally going to be doing that. Now, if you're into an immersive situation, there is another reason why you don't want people walking through, and Jason Brooks this afternoon from LRW Lieberman Research Worldwide is going to talk quite a bit about this. There are all sorts of logistical issues about looking after people if they are walking around with a headset on. Location. Are we going to use a central location or are we going to do it online? If we use a central location, we can access many more facilities and services. We can use the immersive techniques. But of course, we have the sampling limitation of being in a central location. We have the cost implications of having to bring people in, and I'm sure that Maya will talk about some of those implications shortly when she's looking at things from the participant perspective of virtual reality and altered reality. Now, are we going to use other measures besides questions, particularly if we are bringing people into a central location? Then the immersive goggles will do eye tracking, so we can look at where people are looking. That's a nice additional part of using immersive virtual reality. You can see where people are looking at them. You can also do it with flat screen because you can use one of the many eye tracking devices now that will show you again which part of the screen are people looking at. Neuro stuff is kind of my slang for a variety of facial coding, EEG devices, electronic bands around people's heads, all sorts of stuff to try to find out more about what's going on. So if you've got somebody wearing quite a lot of kit, as in an Oculus Rift headset, then it's not a big step to go to add some more pieces onto that. Certainly you can be looking at heart rate, the galvanic skin responses, which measure how involved and the sweat. There are movement devices. There's one that you can put around the chest and you can spot that people are leaning forward, i.e. they're more engaged, they're leaning back. You can use voice analytics as part of that process, get people to talk while they're going around the virtual store, they're taking part in the virtual activity. And then there are analytics that will look at the voice and say, this is more convincing, this is less convincing, and so on. You can do facial coding if you don't have the headset on. So if people are just looking at the screen, then facial coding can be part of that interpretation too. So it can be a lot more than virtual reality. Augmented reality or mediated reality is probably going to be bigger when it's fully with us and it's fully part of the system than virtual reality. So what is mediated reality? It's reality plus something. Virtual reality is an alternative reality by and large. Augmented reality, mediated reality is reality plus. So the classic would be wearing these sorts of glasses and things are shone onto the glasses. So you can see the real world, but you can also see things like this. Google Glass was this sort of device as well. And so you can have additional information shone onto things are. It will also measure your pupils and where your gaze is going and provide additional information. So it will tell you various things. Now, the earliest case of augmented reality really that people became aware of were the jet pilot screens. So they're devices and their dashboard is inside the screen of their helmet. We all, not all of us, many of us, if we drive, we now have a sat nav on the dashboard. That is augmented reality because it shows you an aerial picture of the map of where you're driving. It talks to you about what's going on. And as you come up to junctions, it shows you on many of the sat navs now a picture of what that junction is going to look like. And so you can recognize the layout of the road to help you get through. That is augmented reality. If you're at a conference and the speaker is speaking in French and you're listening in English, that's augmented reality. You go to an exhibition, you go to a museum, you go to an art gallery, and you take a device, which might just be your smartphone, and you're listening to a discussion of the things that are going on around you. Or you can use your Google goggles to get additional information about the pictures that you're looking at. All of these sorts of things where you're getting additional information are augmented reality. And from a research point of view, probably the most exciting is some of the things that people are doing with smartphones. So here is an example of a game where it adds, and this could be zombies chasing you, a variety of things. You're in the real world, your smartphone can see the building behind, but then it superimposes you, the player, the zombies that are chasing you, and whatever. Another example is lots and lots and lots of companies now, like IKEA, have the thing where you can take a picture of your home and add in one of their products, or you can turn the camera around your home and then arrange where that product might sit. And that's augmented reality because we have the reality of the home, we have the product that we want to test, and we put it in there. Very, very few market research projects are using these things at the moment. It's much more involved in the gaming space. It's much more involved in the branded space, the marketing space. There are people out there who are doing a bit of it. To some extent, they're proof of concept work. They're individual cases where the effort and the rest of it justifies it and going forward. But you can see that this sort of augmented reality breaks away from some of the issues that we were talking about in terms of virtual reality, in that it will be in your hand, it will be on your smartphone as part of your life, looking at products. People are also talking about doing stores where you put additional signage through the augmented reality, new product tests through the augmented reality. So a lot of new things to come over the next few years in that zone. There are, of course, alternatives to virtual reality and augmented reality. Probably something like 95% of market research uses the alternatives. Descriptions in words. If you can describe a concept, if you can describe a situation in words, it's easier and it's cheaper and it's the way that you would do it. If you can adequately describe the situation with photographs or movies or whatever, that is cheaper and easier than using virtual reality. So that's how you would do it. Sometimes, even with virtual reality, we can't get a prototype. If you've got to be open the packaging and smell it, if you've really got to be able to use it in your hands, and I'm not aware of anybody who is doing commercial market research yet where you have virtual reality gloves on and where you can feel things and touch things. Most of those are in other zones at the moment. However, prototypes and mock-ups is much harder than virtual reality. So we don't do prototypes and mock-ups if we can use virtual reality or if we can use augmented reality. And then we have market testing or A/B testing where you actually launch things on the market. Mostly that's harder than using VR or augmented reality. In a few cases, A/B testing is cheaper. It's coming in a little bit from left field. What do I mean by A/B testing? Well, if we're running a website, we can change 2 features of the website, see which one is more successful, make that the new normal. Take another 2 features, change them, make that the new normal. If we have a retail outlet that has a lot of digital displays, we can do exactly the same there. So anywhere that's in the digital space, actually A/B testing can be easier than market research, never mind virtual reality or augmented reality market research. So all of those things are going on. We use VR, we use augmented reality when simply words aren't good enough, when photographs are not good enough, and because we don't have to go to the massive expense of prototypes and mock-ups. Changing the focus, digging deeper, distracting, less system 2. So this is all about stopping people over rationalizing things, making them no longer think, okay, this is what the person asking me the question wants me to do. So we'll just run through a few of those. Projective techniques. These have been around 30, 40, 50 years. This is the Rorschach test. All of those projective things. If Samsung were a movie, which movie would it be? Sentence completion. Samsung are trying to ... Cartoons, captions, cloud drawing, user stereotypes. What were the favorite TV programs of Samsung smartphone users? Trying to stop the rational questions, the rational answers coming through. There's a link here to a nice web page that's got a good description, and behind that there's a book which has got a really in-depth look at all of the projective techniques, from the really simple ones to the more complex ones. Betty's going to be joining us in a moment to talk through research through gaming and games, so I'm not going to go into that much. But again, it's stopping people over rationalizing. It's getting them involved so that they're doing things as opposed to just thinking about how to answer survey questions. A lot of interesting work being done by companies like Kubikaloo, so that's Christine Hickey inside the Yoda mask over there, Ari Popper at Sci-Fi Futures, trying to create alternative worlds when we're trying to get future thinking. Let's try to get people to do some drama, let's get them involved in science fiction, let's get them involved in alternative worlds so they can envisage what the world would be like if it was different. And another way of getting people to envisage the world if it's different is what we call deprivation studies. So if you take something away from people, you can't use the bus to get to work for the next week. You can't drink milk for the next week. You can't use this app on your phone for the next week. Is a way of finding out what it really does in their life, what the alternatives are, in a way that would be very difficult for people to rationalize. But now with deprivation studies, instead of giving an alternative mindset, it's a behavioral study, because we've changed the real world, and the altered reality is the real world now behaves differently and we move forward in different ways. So lots and lots of different ways. When is altered reality relevant? Well, there's a little bit of a chart coming up here. If we can answer a problem with knowledge we already have inside our organization or by a report, we should. If we can answer the problem with easy market research, so surveys, focus groups, in-depth interviews, social media, scraping, any of those techniques, then we should. When we need deeper MR, we might use altered reality, we might use behavioral economics, we might use neuroscience, ethnography, semiotics. So we have this tiered structure and we identify which problems need tackling with which tools. So thank you very much for that. And I look forward to any questions.